Welcome to Definitional Debate, the show where we try and fail to define words that have lost all meaning. I'm Dan, the dictionary man, and today I'm joined by the semantics seductress, Caitlin. And over there, the diction decimator, Keith. Decimate the diction! I did not tell them their names until just now. So today's word is hipster, because we so hip over here.
Hipster.
Yeah, so just quickly...
Now you can edit that in.
Yeah. So just quickly, this is our first episode. We are DoingOK, a new channel of fun times. Caitlin is our guest. And basically the point of the show is to talk about words that have sort of lost their meaning and try to debate them.
Or the meaning has spread out through different various cultural things. And sort of there's a debate, in culture of what it really means, the context of the nuance, things like that. So there's some argument already existing about what these things mean.
And sort of going in with the knowledge that we're not going to necessarily come to a conclusion by the end of this video.
I'm going to come to a conclusion.
You already have come to a conclusion, let's be honest. So the first thing we're going to do is sort of go through our own definitions, having not really done like prep work as far as looking what other people are saying, and sort of use that as a setup point. Caitlin, do you want to go first?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I wrote it down on my handy dandy paper.
Whoa.
That's upside down.
She's old school. She's being hipster about it.
Whoa. All right. So I kind of wrote down like a mishmash of things.
Mishmash.
Because I feel like that's where the definition of hipster is at this point.
Okay.
It's a mishmash.
Okay.
So the first thing I wrote down was just like a general like beatniks, beat poetry, Jack Kerouac. Hey.
Jackie K.
And kind of like, so hipsters, especially, I feel like this is more dated, of like generally like outsiders to varying degrees and in varying ways, like their style, music, reading, beliefs, philosophy, things like that. More like modern is like hipsters have like niche interests, like craft beer for interest. For interest? For example.
For example of interests.
Damn it. General, like, go against the norm. I feel like go against the norm kind of is like a more timeless, overarching definition for it. This one's kind of more in a question of, like, people look at, a way a certain person is dressed and they'll say, like, oh, like, you look like a hipster.
Yeah.
Like, skinny jeans, flannels, things like that.
Yeah. Things I never wear.
And at that point, it feels like, especially like the things I just named, are a lot more mainstream now. Yeah. So is hipster mainstream?
Yeah.
I feel like that's I don't know. That's just kind of like a question I wanted to pose.
I had two similar questions, which I think we should come back to.
Okay.
One of my questions was, is it literally definitionally possible to buy something hipsterish at Target? And also, so like once something becomes...
I'm going to say yes, and we can come back to that.
Okay. Yeah. Now, do you want to... you're good?
Like, because we're going to revisit the question, but I kind of just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question.
And then something I wanted to, like, make it a little more personal for this is, like... So, like, in college, I would say I met a lot of hipsters. Yeah. I feel like in general, if you go on a college campus, you're going to meet a lot of hipsters.
Most of them are in the mirror.
That was good. I like that. Specifically Keith's mirror.
Well, I mean, that actually brings me to my next thing about making this personal is everyone name what you went to school for.
What are we? Film.
And your minors and everything.
Film and computer science.
Okay. So, English and poli-sci with a classical literature minor.
Studio art with a minor in art history.
So, here you go.
Okay.
All right, so that's all I wrote down. But
and similarly,
I figure know the people that are coming at you.
And similarly, my other
coming at you.
My other question that I wrote down that we can get back to is: in what way do you consider yourself a hipster? In what ways?
Okay.
I have a great example for that.
Okay.
So I'll read my notes now.
Okay.
So again, hipster. I'm pretty certain that the term kind of comes out of the 40s and 50s. It's part of this fashion and art counterculture. And again, it's the beat generation, it's beat poetry, and again with Jack Kerouac. Now the thing about Jack Kerouac is he hated, what he would call the hipsters, because I think that even from the beginning, what hipster was, it always kind of was a trend. It was a fashion and pose and attitude that people follow. Even if it is counter to main, it is still very collected. And so, in essence, what a hipster is overall in a general sense is kind of counterintuitive, because to going against culture, albeit, mainstream culture, it's really kind of super defining what its own culture is. And by doing that, it can't break away from itself and kind of defeats its own idealism. And I think I watched an interesting video on this a few years ago, and I want to revisit this, we'll get back to it, about kind of what the subculture of hipster, how it seems free and accepting, but maybe is just the opposite, and is super mainstream in certain ways. And my other point that I kind of want to make is, I think that our modern definition of hipster kind of transcends the general meaning and the timeless meaning, because it really becomes more about this revivalist structure around the original hipster. So hipster kind of is this throwback to 40s and 50s kind of fashion and things like that. And so it becomes not only hipster in the general sense, but it becomes neo-hipster in that it's a direct kind of copy of certain things and influenced by certain historical trends that I think moving forward, what hipster means is going to change, because it's going to be now distinct slices of things. So to answer your question about can you go to Target and buy hipster? You can go to Target and buy what is labeled hipster. I'm sure right now, because it's been a few years since I was, all the, more alt, and now it's pretty mainstream, like suspenders and things like that, and you can buy like
but the thing is, I wouldn't consider that legitimately hipster at this point. That has become mainstream.
That's become, so it's not hipster in the idealist sense, but it's hipster with a little h and not a big H. So let's call hipster with a big H is like the idea of what hipster is. And hipster with a little h is what hipster means today, the genre of hipster that you think of, like Lumineers dress.
So now it's interesting that you say that, because I only wrote what I feel like it means to me in this current time, and it is not what you're saying exactly. So can I say my stuff? Okay. So the first part of this that I think is the most different from anything you guys have said is I start this by saying a pejorative term. So meaning that this is a critical term that people use against people. So a pejorative term for someone who goes out of their way to define their tastes in opposition to the mainstream culture in such categories as dress, entertainment, art, food, or alcohol. A hipster seeks out things that are below the mainstream radar and then finds those same things distasteful once they gain widespread appeal. For a hipster, taste isn't about what they like, but rather liking things that nobody else does.
Okay.
So to me, that's the thing, is like, once something is labeled hipster, like the Spenders or whatever, to me, it no longer is. It's become mainstream. And it's people, it's people imitating hipsterdom while not understanding it.
And I think that kind of falls under the big H hipster. But I'm going to push for that. I think that there is now a little H hipster, which is a very distinct moment in time, which is a modern time, which seeks to revitalize certain historical trends.
I can understand that. It's just, I remember I was at Target a few days ago with a few weeks ago with some friends, and this is kind of what made me want to do this in the first place. This particular episode is that I was buying a few things, and they're like, "Oh, you're getting all these hipster things," and I'm like, "I'm at Target. This is like literally the mainstream of mainstream. I don't think it's physically possible." Buying? It was like I was thinking about getting one of those like Russian hats, and then I ended up buying it. And then like,
you mean like Ushanka?
Yeah. And then like I think I got like I was getting a specific shirt. I don't remember exactly what it was.
It said I Heart PBR.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
It had like bottle openers like attached to it as studs.
Now I'm glad you brought up the PBR thing.
I hate PBR.
Because when you first told me that to you PBR is very indicative of hipster.
Yes.
I found that very strange.
Little H hipster.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Because I found that very strange, because I had always heard of PBR as being what you drink when you don't have money. And that
in your Alston apartment.
And that it's like a lower class thing, or like I'm in high school and I can't get what I actually want. And so to me it was like, oh, like not like what the cool people are doing, but like what you have to do. Which
I knew people who were better off than I was, and like had their own apartment before I did, like in college, and they only wanted PBR. They often didn't suggest other beers, unless it was like IPA.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that was interesting is that you brought up the craft beer thing, and that's like, is there a difference between like hipster and like yuppie? Because to me, craft beer is yuppie.
I think that there's a certain evolution of the last 10 years that it's gone from sort of this, I'm going to use the word lo-fi, perhaps mistakenly, but, it's not needing the best, needing the classically average, but in a slightly less Americana way, to be this hipster thing. So PBR, and that turns into the craft beer, and all the craft IPAs, which again we'll get back into, and it's where hipster and yuppie merge. Is what really kind of makes these things take hold, and then this becomes the mainstream in that way.
Because I do agree with you about there being the big H versus the little H, because I feel like there's the little H is what the mainstream thinks hipster is, while also just being what the mainstream is turning into right now.
So what I'm going to jump in is in regards to little H. Hip ease, I would say, is the hipster little H of that time period.
Okay.
Because it very much is what that is, and that's why the name is like that. It's these trends that are being followed. It's what's hip. So the hip E's are hipsters. They're the little H hipsters of that genre, of that time frame.
Yeah, makes sense. I can dig it.
So I think that little H hipsters really are distinct slices of time that happen and get labeled as certain things. So just as what is a hipster now, which is like, dress like the Lumineers, craft beer, craft IPA, I probably have like a barrel in my house kind of thing.
Would you consider my glasses hipster glasses?
No.
I feel like certain people I feel like we've kind of gone past that, but I think if I had these 10 years ago, people might have.
I think that when you say hipster glasses, what you really mean is Buddy Holly's.
Yeah. But I feel like for a while there was literally just something that was thick and black.
I think, to me, I would describe those as kind of post-mod inspired. So those seem to me more like art gallery and the 60s inspired, rather than like 50s, like everyman kind of like.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting.
That might be the new wave. You might be a trendsetter.
So then kind of going off of what you're saying of the like two different
versions
of hipster. So do you think that hipster itself is a very specific like grouping or niche of people? Or do you think hipster is kind of an umbrella term? So like my example here would be like the punk and goth crowd. Would you say that
I would say
is going to fall under hipster?
Little H hipster is not necessarily an umbrella term that punk and goth fit under, but I would say that little H hipster of right now is a parallel to that. And that it's a subgenre of culture in the same vein. It just has its own distinct category.
Well, also, so do you think, we know how there's pockets, there's specific pockets of different cities and stuff that are considered especially parts of San Francisco and stuff, right, are considered very hipster.
Right.
I feel like I would consider that big H hipster, or would you consider that little H hipster?
I think that
I'd consider that mostly gentrification.
There's so much bleed over. That's the thing, is there's so much bleed over, especially while it's happening. It's hard to very clearly differentiate in a general sense when you say this neighborhood is or whatever. Because especially like you mentioned with gentrification, it's where yuppie and big H hipster meet that you get little H hipster for the most part, and how little H hipster becomes marketable fashion style for now mainstream stores to sell or for music, whatever.
Yeah, well, I had someone I know recently. So, do they know we're in the Boston area?
We're in the Boston area.
Okay, cool. So, some of you may understand this better than others, but I'll try to explain it. So, someone that I know, she was talking on the phone to one of her friends about the area, and she was like, "Oh yeah, JP is really cool and hipster." JP, Jamaica Plain, is a poor neighborhood, right outside of Boston. It's where a lot of minorities live. A lot of people who live there, especially who grew up there, aren't well off. But now there's
college kids moving.
A lot of college kids, a lot of LGBTQ people live there now, and so a lot of and rent is cheaper, but now it's getting moved up because people are like, oh, now this is a cool trendy place where we've got our community garden and our karaoke bar. And so, I mean, it's problematic in a lot of ways, and it's also like I feel like that's important, especially because you brought up neighborhoods of how hipsters, yuppies, and things like that don't just impact subculture and mainstream culture as far as target goes, but as far as like how we view things in general. And when you make a certain neighborhood trendy, who suffers?
So gentrification is a really good point. Now, do you think there's any level of romanticization of poverty?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. People think that, oh, wow, I just want to like lay on the floor of my apartment, do some drugs, have some crazy hair, and like listen to some wild music with my friends, and we barely go to work.
Man, it's wild.
Or like I'll work from home in my loft apartment in NYC.
Yeah, it's the romantic mythology of the starving artist.
Yeah. Well, that makes me understand the PBR thing more.
Yeah. And that is, it's a big part of it, especially, I think, in what little H hipster is of, 2005 to now is like, it's that plus, suspenders, a handlebar mustache, a fur felt fedora, PBR, it's all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm going to go, whatever, make my own this is out of wood. It's a certain kind of curated thing that just becomes these superficial things laid on to the starving artist feel, where it's like, I can have all these nice things, but, oh, hey, I made this, I found this, it's like it's a bragging. It's a bragging.
Yeah.
No.
It's like a humble brag.
So do you guys agree with the pejorative part of this?
I think that largely, yes.
Okay. Yeah, in a lot of ways it is like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be, but I think it definitely is used that way.
Yeah. And I think that leaning into that, so it being pejorative, we can kind of talk about, I think that the reason that is because if you are little H hipster, you want to be big H hipster, but little H hipster kind of defeats big H hipster.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And we can maybe start to have that discussion.
I think there's also that kind of reminds me of like how a lot of people won't define themselves as a hipster.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just because like, oh, it's a hard thing, or once you define yourself as a hipster, you're not a hipster. It's that larger conversation, I suppose.
I think to help us... So, in regards to how the pejorative evolves and what that really means, I think that it would help us if we discuss kind of Jack Kerouac in that sense. And was Jack Kerouac... Kerouac, yeah, good old Kerouac. Was Jack Kerouac big H hipster, little H hipster, something different? How does that fit in?
Yeah, and I think, well, no matter what, we can all accept that liking Jack Kerouac currently is little H hipster. That the idea...
can be applied as such.
Yeah, I mean, that people would label you as hipster for liking Jack Kerouac.
Yeah.
Perhaps unfairly.
Hey, go moan for man.
Huh?
Go moan for man.
Well, here's the thing. I think you can actually be like mainstream hipster Jack Kerouac lover if you like don't like actually care about it. If you like it because it's cool to like it. If you didn't like spend a lot of time like actually learning about it and reading then I feel like you're more legitimately like you're just trying to be trendy.
Yeah.
You're subscribing to the idea of
you're subscribing to the pose.
Yeah, the facade of being countercultural as opposed to actually being countercultural.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. As far as Jack Kerouac goes, I would say that he didn't have a direct desire to go against the norm per se. Not entirely, at least. I think there were parts of mainstream society he definitely did reject. But I think it was mostly that he had his own needs and desires and philosophy that weren't being met in mainstream society, so he sought it elsewhere. And then mainstream society takes that and it looks at it and mainstream society defines it as a hipster. And so that comes back to, would he define himself as a hipster? Absolutely not. Did other people? Most likely.
So yes. I just want to get into the backstory. So the events of this novel is based off of occurred in the 40s, kind of at the beginning / before kind of what you think of as the true Beat generation in, what is popular culture, what it became, sort of the pose of it. So, but this was published in 57. So this kind of, him doing what he did in the 40s, and when this came out in the 50s, kind of influenced the generation right after him, and they kind of became what you think of as the original hipsters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the reason it's used so pejoratively now is there's a air. I mean, I think that my definition was the most negative as far as the air of arrogance and the air of exclusionary feeling, right? It's like, oh, I don't want anybody else to like what I like. And once they like it, I'm done. You know, like...
Now, I think that's interesting also because I think that's built into what counterculture is in the first place.
Yeah.
And what even potentially subculture is in the first place. Because you have to have some exclusion, you have to have some arrogance because you are working so hard to curate an identity, curate a pose, which is in itself an art.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you have to say, well, I've worked hard to do this, so your idea of this doesn't meet this, so you can't be this. You can't be what I've created. Yeah. Or you have that goes against what I've created. Yeah. I can't even be a part of what you're part of. Yeah. So I think that no matter what it is, that's kind of built into that. I think that what's interesting about this particular counterculture is it's so much about that meta aspect of what counterculture is.
Yeah, I just think there's something that's this very distasteful to me of the idea of not just liking what you like because you like it. You know, that being like, oh, this thing that I legitimately love, now other people love it too, I'm out. You know, like
how much did you really get? Well, because you can apply this to a lot of things. Like take a band, take a really indie band that you're that you're super into, and then suddenly you hear it on the radio one day. You could have a couple of reactions to that. You could be like, "Wow, I followed them for many years now. I'm so proud of them that they finally made it this far. That's so great. Like now other people can appreciate them. They're gonna go farther in life and better themselves, and they have more of a chance to expand themselves. Yeah. Or you can
more people are going to be influenced by the art of it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And or you could be like, wow, anything on the radio is trash. so they're trash.
I have a good personal story with this that I think is a middle space between that. Yeah. Because I think I hate radio stations in a general sense. Yes. Because of the repetition. I can't stand that from an emotional psychological standpoint. But I think that and this is different, in the college radio station, when I heard Lorde on the radio for the first time, I remember the summer, I don't remember what year it was, but I distinctly remember what I was doing and all that whole summer feel. I remember hearing Lorde on the radio station, the song Royals, and I remember being like, whoa. You know, what is this? This is cool. Like, at first I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. Do I like this? Do I hate this? I'm like, no, I love this. Yeah. And then I remember, getting the album and, like, really enjoying it so much, having it on all the time. And then when she broke through to all, like, the mainstream radio stations, and she had this whole album full of great stuff, and all they would ever play is the same song over and over again, like, 20 times in an hour, And I remember that being like, this is like ruining for me. Like, I want to listen to this and enjoy it, but I can't because all I can think of is like, cars rolling by with the same songs.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I think that in general has in some ways more. It's a weird mixture because it has more to do with just the general radio effect. Yeah. Right. Where it's once you hear something a bazillion times. The
radio effect.
Yeah. Like that. It's not necessarily like, oh, it's popular. It's more like I'm hearing it so much when I don't want to be.
It's oversaturation.
Yeah. I know I'm super gonna sound like a hipster right now because, like, as far as music goes, I don't listen to the radio. Yeah. I have a radio, but I only set it to NPR when I wake up in the morning. Yeah. See, that's where I knew that was gonna come in. So like, for instance, like, I'll find a song or a friend will introduce me to a song when we're hanging out, and I'll really like it, and I'll play it for myself. And then, like, if I play it again, like, for one of my friends, they'll be like, oh, like, that song is so overplayed. Yeah. Like, can we just put on something else? And I was just, but, like, my reaction's always the same. It's like, oh, really? Like, I mean, like, I don't know, because I won't overplay a song more than I want to hear it. Yeah. And I don't have, like, that outside influence generally, like, because I don't go to clubs as much as I used to, and I don't...
It's getting old.
So old. And I don't have a car. I don't...
Poor! We just already decided they're the same thing, okay?
Can't afford a car, guys. You drive in the city? I have my radio set to one station, mostly because my radio is super finicky and and you can't see the station.
Yeah,
so
you got the alarm radio from the 80s, very hipster.
It was a gift from my parents.
Because they know you're a hipster.
Yeah, an alarm radio from the 80s that you didn't pay for.
I mean, honestly, I think it's hard to say that not listening to the radio is a hipster thing because I think at this point technology has shifted so much.
I feel like
people have Spotify or whatever. Like,
exactly. Spotify, Pandora, it's YouTube.
I want to talk more about the exclusionary stuff and that, like, I think that can be okay. I think there's a level that where I agree, where it's like that's how you're creating your own image, right? You're identifying. I think it can go way too far as I mean, then we kind of bleed into like fandom, gating fandoms and being like, well, you're not a real fan, and that can be very.
I have what might be a silly question. But might not be. As far as like who's more likely to be like a vindictive hipster, I guess like, you know, like
great band.
Like a hipster that will reject other people and say like you're not like a true hipster. Basically, would it be the capital H or the lowercase h? I would say lowercase h probably, but
vindictive. I
don't know. Just like how it's like your general like explanation.
That's a good question.
The negativity.
Because
I think both.
Yeah. My gut reaction is big H. Because they actually care about that more, and it's not as much. Because I feel like little h is a facade. It's not like who your actual identity is. It's who you are curating your identity to be.
I don't think it's as big of a hard line in the sand. I think that there's always bleed over, and I think that little h almost always thinks that they're big H. And I don't think that it's like, you know, I'm waking up in the morning, I'm putting on these clothes, and I know that I'm pretending. I don't think it's like that.
I agree.
I think it's literally, it's cool. It's cool because it's counter. It's, you know, it's jazz, it's rock and roll, it's counter. So it's cool, and that is the curation. And the curation is not false. It's just intentional.
That's why I have such a hard time accepting that anything at Target can possibly be hipster, because I'm like, it literally factually is not counter anything. It's literally mainstream.
But I think little h hipster of the now is very much a fashion style. That can be branded.
You can buy what people in 20 years are gonna think what hipster was. Basically.
And that is a discussion I want to have towards the end of this video. Is in 20 years, what does little h hipster look like? And what our projections and ideas for that would be.
All right. Do we want to talk more about our own personal hipsterdom?
Do you have questions, I guess?
Well, so for myself, I can only think of one thing that jumps out at me, and I'm interested to see if you guys can think of anything else for me, because I'm sure there are other things, but it's hard for me to. I mean, aside from the fact, I guess I am little age, like I wear flannel and shit. Like,
but see, the thing about flannel is like flannel and jeans is like the most normal thing you can wear. And it's just like it went away for a little bit, but then it came back. So when it came back, it was like, well,
it's warm and it's nice.
You know, you're not wearing like a football shirt, you know, so you're not, you know, this is a non-normal thing now.
Comment down below if you disagree with me on this or you want to argue, but. One of the Jan's a jerk.
Let's be honest. Anyone who wants to comment wants to argue, especially on a show that's called Debate.
Like one of the groups, or the primary group that I think brought that style back was lesbians. You know, minority groups are usually the groups that mainstream culture are going to copy and make cool. That's why. You know, poor neighborhoods are trendy. That's why, you know, LGBTQ fashion is cool. That's why why now everyone's using drag slang. Like, yes, work. You know, like that's why everyone is using that now, because minority culture is seen as cool.
Yeah, it gets romanticized. Just like
exactly.
Thing. Yeah, I would argue, and this is based on literally nothing, but my assumption, so I'm not really going to argue.
That's such a great question.
My assumption is that is what brought it back for women. I don't think that's necessarily what brought it back for men.
I think that what's interesting about flannel,
well, the thing with lesbians is the thing with lesbians.
I
don't want to like cut that out and say that differently, and I don't know how.
It's okay. The thing with lesbians
is like, and this isn't an umbrella thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, but like, especially when people are trying to like identify each other in a minority culture, there's a reason why people dress a certain way. It's like in the 20s when men would wear flowers at certain parties, like it was a certain kind of flower, like a lavender or something. The same thing with like the flannel. In lesbian culture, a lot of women like project themselves more masculine. That's not to say that femme lesbians don't exist.
What's tricky about the flannel thing in particular is flannel never was not popular on like LL Bean.
Yeah.
So like it is always, and LL Bean is not counterculture in any way. No. So it's like one of the things that like never really went away. It just became old guy. Yeah. And then became young guy again.
Honestly, I feel like fashion is the hardest thing to talk about in this arena. Yeah. Because fashion itself just is always ebbing and flowing.
Yeah.
So
scrunchies.
Yeah. But I do want to say, so I mean, I didn't actually say the thing that I was going to say for myself as far as my personal story. So like, I think the thing that like, jumped out to me the most would probably be things involving Joss Whedon. Because I've seen like every single thing that he's ever done.
I like how it wasn't like TV shows and movies. It was things involving.
No, that like I've seen everything he's ever done.
My general Thursday night dinner with Joss Whedon.
And he's like, I mean, he's always been like popular with the subculture. Yeah. But until Avengers, he was very much like most people did not know his name. Yeah. And then Avengers happened, one of the biggest movies ever.
And then you hate Avengers now.
No,
you just rejected Joss Whedon.
So I'm not like, I don't think I'm full hipster because I still like the Avengers and I still like his work and everything. But it like bums me out that people are like, I'm a Joss Whedon fan because I saw Avengers. Especially the ones who call him Josh, which really bothers me.
I mean, that's his real name, right?
So yeah, I mean, like that really bothers me when people are just like, I mean, it's like be a fan of like what he did there, be a fan of Avengers, whatever. But like to me, there's a lot more to being a fan of someone's work than saying I like that one movie that
everyone knows about.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay.
No. What about you guys?
I do a lot of thrift shopping. This coffee table was free.
Nice.
So was this. Mm-hmm. Where the hell did you get this camera, Keith?
Online Goodwill auction.
Yeah. I got this at Garment District, which is
how do you feel about this?
I mean, I feel like it's financially sustainable. Like, the thing is, like, I know this is labeled as hipster, but here's I think my big thing as far as, like, me thrift shopping was, like, I have a few different drives. Yeah. Mostly it's money.
Yeah.
Of why I thrift shop. One thing that I like, and this doesn't go for everything, but, like, I do like to shop local. As far as, like, my food goes, my, furniture, clothes, etc. If I can, I'd like to shop local. There are certain brands that I actually completely stay away from because I don't like the way that they treat their employees. And so I don't want to give that establishment my money.
Yeah.
So there are certain things like that. But the biggest thing is, like, you can buy a $300 coat for $5. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm so down for that because I get cold in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference, though. I feel like if someone labeling you a hipster for getting this table for free or for buying a cheap coat that you like, someone labeling you a hipster for that is just not understanding you, like not understanding your situation. Yeah. I think there's a difference between that and this. There's a difference between like being like, I need this object, I'm gonna get the cheap version, versus I don't need this object.
I just wouldn't have a coffee table if I didn't get this for free. I didn't have a kitchen table for nearly a year until his dad found me one on the side of the road because I couldn't afford to buy a kitchen table. Yeah. I was so like, but I know that when I tell people like, oh yeah, I got that kitchen set, like that kitchen table and chairs on the side of the road, they're just like, oh, you're such a hipster. Like, I know what's going through people's minds, but it's whatever.
Well, I think that the people that say that you are using this in a joking way, I don't think they're necessarily saying, you
some
filthy
people,
hipster. I think they're saying, like,
I'm a dirty hipster.
Oh, that Caitlin, what a filthy hipster.
Well, yeah, because you're right, because it can be a literal pejorative term, but it can also just be a joke of culture at this point. Like, it's the idea of being a hipster is a joke at this point.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Yuck. And like you were saying, liking old books is very considered hipster. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I was an English major and a classic lit minor, so I read a lot of books. I read a lot of old books. Yeah. Like 1,000-year dated books.
Yeah. So tell me when you're ready to transition into the train wreck, which is going to be my story.
Fudge. I mean, I don't know. Like, is there anything? I'm trying to think of like anything else.
I mean, what would you consider your hair?
My hair?
I mean, that's not really hipster, but like it's in the zone, maybe.
I want it to look like an anime character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do with that what you will.
Yeah.
So again, it's subculture as a whole. I think we're gonna have a hard time because if you want to all subculture can become uppercase H hipster in some way.
Yeah.
I think we
well, like, because for instance,
as we go.
Most of the TV shows I watch aren't in English. They're in like Japanese or Korean or Chinese.
I would consider that hipster.
Okay.
Yeah. Big or little?
I mean, it's okay. So if I didn't know you and you told me that, I would say you're little H.
She is so little H.
Like, because that's the thing. If I just met someone, they're like, or it's like when someone says, "I don't want a television." And I'm just like,
I want a television.
Like when they're like when it's a point of pride to not own a television, I think it's little H.
No, I don't like reject English shows. I just like I haven't picked up one in a while. Like How I Met Your Mother until the last season was like great. Game of Thrones is coming back soon, and I can't wait. Yeah,
so that's the thing is you're not like, oh, it's popular, I'm not gonna watch it.
Yeah. Exactly. Because like there are a lot of English shows that I do like. It just happens to be that they're either on hiatus or have ended, and I haven't picked up a new one.
So to me, I think like that's in the zone, but because I know you and I know that it's not like a status thing for you, like I don't feel that way. But that's certainly worth that would be worth making fun of you for.
That's fair. I'm used to being made fun of. Go ahead.
All right, Keith.
So
let's make fun of him.
Yeah.
Oh, this is gonna be. I can go get a picture of him in high school from my room.
High school.
High school.
Yeah, I have your senior portrait, and I have 2 pictures of you in high school in my room.
Senior? What's wrong with my senior portrait?
Let's go get it.
Paul. Here. No, I'll just scan it in.
So I would say, backing up, a good portion of my wardrobe is from thrift shops. Mm-hmm. Even like my workwear, like my dress clothes, it's like from thrift shops.
And that would be true of you, no matter what amount of money you have. Yeah.
That's just the kind of person who's I want to have nice things, but I want to do it in a way that I'm not wasting my money. Yeah. I'm going to do it. I'm going to consider all my options and try to pick the best one. And that's just who I am. I try to make my decisions slowly. Yeah. These are my vintage cameras. Yeah. This was given to me by a coworker of my father. This I ordered online on an auction. And again, I'm into photography. Lately, I've been trying to get more into photography, and with that, more into film photography. Yeah. And so I've been ordering old cameras, seeing what works, what I can learn from various things. Yeah. And I think that's been cool. So I
feel like the fact that this all is very in a weird gray area, because I feel like the fact that you actually go and take pictures, that you have a degree where you learn this stuff, makes it more like you have a hobby, or like
the way that I view that.
The
way that I view that is like there's a difference between owning a record because you listen to it a lot and you like it, and just putting the record on the wall as a decoration. Yeah. There's a difference between using these cameras and you ordered them or you were given them because they were going to be functional for you, or being purely a decoration on the coffee table.
Yeah. So, like, for instance, one of the cameras I've been using the most is an old Japanese rangefinder from the mid-50s, and I've just been really enjoying it. Yeah. I also own a turntable and vinyls.
Well, because, I mean, you get into this weird area where if you're just going to say, oh, someone owns old stuff, where it's like, I'm not going to call someone a hipster who, I mean, especially when you add age into it. Like, if you're like a 40-year-old man who, like, collects old wooden boats, like, you're not a hipster, you just like old wooden boats. Yeah,
you just like old wooden boats. So why is anyone ever criticizing you?
Like little figurines of boats, or like actual boats?
I don't mean actual.
I thought you meant actual boats. Like, he had a big basement.
A better example would be that my uncle has in his basement, he's been building an old train collection for like a really long time. And like, they go around, he made like a whole section. It's like, he's not being a hipster, he just likes old train, and I feel like there's a difference there. And it's also about, I think there's a difference between being an enthusiast of one particular thing versus, he has his train collection and his record collection and his wooden boats.
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier, I feel like hipster is also like, I don't know, it's like, it's in between because it's niche. Like, if you're into something that's niche, and you're like, especially when you make that your thing, that can either, it's just like your thing, you like it, or it's hipster. And I feel like that's just like how you view it. Like, I don't think that's I don't know if we can define that.
The thing with me is
super objective.
Being the enthusiast, I just have too many
interests,
things that falls under. So like, whether it's music or like photography or whatever. So I think like I kind of have all the avenues to go down and get that label. The other thing that's not going to help me is
this is like his hearing.
Oh my god, was this really an intervention video?
So I own mustache wax. I don't use it often, and definitely not in the summer because it will melt.
What do you shave with?
Beard balm.
You know, with the brush and the soap.
Which now I do because of him.
and a double-edged soap.
I also have beard wax.
But my dad does it now too.
Yeah. And again, I will say with those things, fine. If you want to label it, I'll accept it, whatever.
Yeah.
But for me,
the products are good products.
The products are better and better for if you have a beard. And the safety razor is a lot better if you're trying to define a neckline because you know exactly where the blade is. And I think that in general, so it's more than that too. I mean, that's why I stuck with it, but maybe I tried it because I thought it was interesting and the build qualities. I like having a metal object that I can replace the blades of that are really inexpensive than having a plastic object that I have to keep throwing away cartridges and cartridges that cost a lot of money and they shouldn't. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of things like that fall into my personality.
The thing is that I feel like, well, you're an enigma in general, right? So I think people who haven't listened to all our old stuff, you switched what your quote unquote stereotypical group would be a billion times throughout high school and middle school and everything. You went through all the phases of different types of dress and things like
Let's
that.
Let's go through them.
Yeah. He had army man, he had greaser, he had hippie, now then he went back to being he went pure hipster, then he went to
pure hipster,
mustache man and whatever it be, more lumberjack. And I mean these are variations of hipster, but I think the thing is I don't know. Clearly you're being influenced to a certain degree, but I also feel like if right now the things that you're into weren't being labeled as hipster, you would still be into them. And so therefore... I
would say for the most part,
yeah. And so I feel like these things could shift as far as what the little age hipster are, and you would still like them. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like you're in a weird zone.
Yeah, I think that...
I was an emo kid.
Yeah, because for me, a lot of the things that fall into that category, and I wonder how much it's influenced what little age hipster became is, mustache wax. I didn't want to get mustache wax because I wanted to be a part of a certain subculture. Yeah. I wanted to get mustache wax because suddenly it was available and known to me, and I grew up reading Sherlock Holmes and things like that. Yeah. And so a lot of these things for me is in a way, kind of a juvenile playtime in a certain way.
It's fun.
But it's I'm curating what I want to do because it's interesting to me and I want to try it and then see if I like it. And I have, these historical things is because of how the things that I've always been interested in and how I can now have the availability to then explore those things.
I also think that male grooming in general is not talked about enough and therefore considered either you're way too metrosexual and into yourself or you're a hipster. Yeah. Whereas for women, it's not weird that I own rose petal shea moisture for dry skin. No. So it's more accepted for a woman to do it. Yeah. And for a woman to explore all her options, that's thought of as that's not even thought of as anything. That's just whatever.
It's
she was perusing the internet.
We're making money off of her.
yeah, she was perusing the internet and found this, and she started using it, and she recommended it to her friends because it was great. Yeah. Whereas if a guy was oh wow, my beard's kind of itchy. What do I do?
Yeah. And so I use beard oil every day, and I would say it being a hipster thing is great because it's available and there's so many options now.
Also, you got some for me. I use it. It's great. So
because, I'm not... otherwise your face gets itchy. Yeah. So
it's great.
Use it. You know.
Yeah. Comment down below on a scale of 1 to 10, how hipster are we?
Yeah. In order.
Rank us. Yeah. Who is the more hipster?
And ask hipster questions about how hipster we are.
Yeah. See if we can answer them or not.
Real quick before we wrap up, I just want to revisit something that I wrote down. I want to get back is what do we think? What are our projections? What does hipster look like? Little H hipster in 15 years, 20 years? Yeah. What becomes what is now the craft beer, coffee shop, suspenders kind of look? What does that look like in 20 years? How does that evolve?
So is this how the 90s are coming back right now?
It could mean that, if that's part of it.
So how in the future are we thinking? 20 years from now?
15, 20 years, yeah.
I think it's possible that owning a television could be, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
People might start using projectors more frequently again.
I feel like we're going to have video walls. I feel like computers are going to be integrated so directly that having a especially a one that isn't like a smart TV, I feel like that could be a thing.
Yeah.
CDs and tapes are already kind of in that zone, but I feel like it could become more of a thing.
So to kind of follow up on what that means, like versus kind of like these old things, I think what's going to be an interesting trend, and I think that we have even kind of caught on to or started to caught on to with our Sunday Night Prowl is, you know, right now analog is
Sunday Night Prowl is another one of our shows. Check it out.
I think it'll be out by the time.
I was just saying they might not have seen it. Yeah,
right on my face.
No, that's not going to happen.
Okay. So whereas right now in cameras, what's cool is, you know, what's hipster, what's cool is 35mm film. Getting back to that basic, I think that the new version of lo-fi is going to be lo-fi digital. I think you're going to see people with, you know, 5-megapixel digital cameras, and that's going to be the new cool. It's like, what can you do with those limitations? How can you bring back a certain visual aesthetic, like of a Razor flip phone camera? Like, how does it look?
Having an iPod, like not an iPod Touch, but a pre-iPod.
I think that kind of digital devices, even though it's, you know, it is digital, I think there's going to be a certain new frame that becomes what is, I'm using this because I know it's worse, but there's a warmth, there's a character to it that's different than having it work perfectly well.
I think there's a weird thing of like, I only watch things that are 4:3. Like being like, I don't watch widescreen anymore, right? Like, I feel like that could be a thing.
Oh, that's so weird.
Keith is doing stuff.
I love SLRs. It just looks better than real life. Like, even like not even the film, just like looking through the prism. It just like and the split crosshairs. What does fashion look like? What does hipster fashion look like in 20 years?
I don't know.
Because I think 90s revival will be over by then.
Yeah. I mean, there is like, well, then you just kind of, if we're going in chronological order, which we most likely are, there's the early, 2000s. So it could be like low-rise jeans, could be ABC Family, could make a comeback, but also it could just like go in a completely different way, as it already is, and this has never really gone away. Of like maybe like swing fashion could come back, the 20s.
Zoot suits?
Like flapper girls. That kind of thing could come back.
I mean, is that not already kind of hipster?
It is, and they kind of, I guess,
it just
loosely
small.
falls
but it
under
could be
like rockabilly, but like a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, but I feel like what I'm taking this question as what's going to become the little H hipster.
I agree. Because I agree that the zoot suit thing is not like, it's like hipster, but it's not like the mainstream hipster.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the contemporary little H.
Yeah, you could see a lot more like 50s dresses going on with like the tight waist and the bell out. Yeah. Like you could, I don't think, I for some reason I don't feel like the 80s are going to come back. Let it die.
I cut my own hair. Does that make it?
That's already another video sheet. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Please check out our other videos and look forward to the next definitional debate. I don't know what the word's going to be, but it will be exciting.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That was awesome having you. Please subscribe. Bye-bye. That would go so well with the visuals. Like